Comprehension. The verbal section of the GRE contains 10 passages, with anywhere from 1 to 6 questions per passage. The majority of passages will be 1 to 2 paragraphs in length, with only a couple that are several paragraphs long. The subject matter of a passage can be almost anything, but the most common themes are science, politics, history, and culture. Most people find the passages difficult because the subject matter is dry and unfamiliar. Obscure subject matter is chosen so that your reading comprehension will be tested, not your knowledge of a particular subject. Remember, you're not expected to be familiar with any of the subjects, so don't worry if you are initially confused by the passage. One technique that you may find helpful for the longer passages is to preview it by reading the first sentence of each paragraph. Generally, the topic of a paragraph is contained in the first sentence. Reading the first sentence of each paragraph will give an overview of the passage. The topic sentences act, in essence, as a summary of the passage. Furthermore, since the passages are shorter, previewing the topic sentences will not use up an inordinate amount of time. If you are pushed for time, we recommend reading the first third of a passage before answering the questions. Let the questions guide you through the passage. They should give you a good sense of where to look. Let's discuss the different types of questions you'll encounter on the reading comprehension portion of the test. Main idea questions. The main idea is usually stated in the last, occasionally the first, sentence of the first paragraph. If it's not there, it'll probably be the last sentence of the entire passage. Main idea questions are usually the first questions asked. Some common main idea questions are, which of the following best expresses the main idea of the passage? The primary purpose of the passage is to discuss. In the passage, the author's primary concern is to discuss. Main idea questions are rarely difficult. After all, the author wants to clearly communicate her ideas to you. If, however, after the first reading, you don't have a feel for the main idea, review the first and last sentence of each paragraph. These will give you a quick overview of the passage. Because main idea questions are relatively easy, the test writers try to obscure the correct answer by surrounding it with close answer choices, detractors, that either overstate or understate the author's main point. Answer choices that stress specifics tend to understate the main idea. Choices that go beyond the scope of the passage tend to overstate the main idea. The answer to a main idea question will summarize the author's argument, yet be neither too specific or too broad. Description questions. Description questions, as with main idea questions, refer to a point made by the author. However, description questions refer to a minor point, or to incidental information, not to the author's main point. Again, these questions take various forms. According to the passage, in line 37, the author mentions, for the purpose of, the passage suggests that which of the following would. The answer to a description question must refer directly to a statement in the passage, not to something implied by it. However, the correct answer will paraphrase a statement in the passage, not give an exact quote. In fact, exact quotes, same language traps, are often used to bait wrong answers. Be careful when answering a description question. You must find the point of the passage from which the question is drawn. Don't rely on memory. Too many complicated tactics are used with these questions. Not only must the correct answer refer directly to a statement in the passage, but it must also refer to the relevant statement. The correct answers will be surrounded by wrong choices that refer directly to the passage, but don't address the question. These choices can be tempting because they tend to be quite close to the actual answer. Once you spot the sentence to which the question refers, you must still read a few sentences before and after it to put the question in context. If a question refers to line 20, the information needed to answer it can occur anywhere from line 15 to 25, also depending of course on the length of the passage. Even if you have spotted the answer in line 20, you should still read a couple more lines to make certain you have the proper perspective. Writing technique questions. All coherent writing has a superstructure or blueprint. When writing, we don't just randomly jot down our thoughts. We organize our ideas and present them in a logical manner. For instance, we may present evidence that builds up to a conclusion, but intentionally leave the conclusion unstated. Or we may present a position and then contrast it with an opposing position. Or we may draw an extended analogy. There are an endless number of writing techniques that the authors use to present their ideas, so we cannot classify every method. However, some techniques are very common to the types of explanatory or opinionated writing found in the GRE passages. Compare and contrast two positions. This technically has a number of variations, but the most common and direct is to develop two ideas or systems, comparing, and then point out why one is better than the other, contrasting. Some common tip-off phrases to this method of analysis are by contrast, similarly, just as, likewise, on one hand, on the other hand, whereas, conversely. Some typical questions for these types of passages are, according to the passage, a central distinction between a woman's presence and a man's presence is, in which of the following ways does the author imply that birds and reptiles are similar? Based on the evidence in the passage, which method for classifying music is more effective? Writing technique questions are similar to main idea questions, except that they ask about how the author presents his ideas, not about the ideas themselves. Generally, you will be given only two writing methods to choose from, but each method will have two or more variations. Extension questions. Extension questions are the most common type of questions. They require you to go beyond what is stated in the passage, to draw an inference from the passage, to make a conclusion based on the passage, or to identify the author's tacit assumptions. You may be asked to draw a conclusion based on the ideas or facts presented. It can be inferred from the passage that, the passage suggests or implies that. Since extension questions require you to go beyond the passage, the correct answer must say more than what is said in the passage. Beware of same language traps with these questions. The correct answer will often both paraphrase and extend a statement in the passage, but it will not directly quote it. For extension questions, any answer choice that explicitly refers to or repeats a statement in the passage will probably be wrong. Application questions. Application questions differ from extension questions only in degree. Extension questions ask you to apply what you've learned from the passage to derive new information about the same subject, whereas application questions go one step further, asking you to apply what you've learned from the passage to a different or hypothetical situation. The following are common application questions. Which one of the following is most likely source of the passage? Which one of the following actions would be most likely to have the same effect as the author's actions? You may be asked to complete a thought for the author. The author would most likely agree with which of the following statements? Which one of the following statements would the author most likely use to complete the last paragraph of the passage? To answer an application question, take the author's perspective. Ask yourself, what am I arguing for? What might make my argument stronger? What might make it weaker? Because these questions go well beyond the passage, they tend to be the most difficult. Furthermore, because application questions and extension questions require a deeper understanding of the passage, skimming, or worse yet, speed reading, the passage is ineffective. Skimming may give you the main idea and structure of the passage, but it's unlikely to give you the subtleties of the author's attitude. Tone questions. Tone questions ask you to identify the writer's attitude or perspective. Is the writer's feelings towards the subject positive, negative, or neutral? Does the writer give his own opinion, or does he objectively present the opinions of others? Before you read the answer choices, decide whether the writer's tone is positive, negative, or neutral. It is best to do this without referring to the passage. However, if you do not get a feel of the writer's attitude on the first reading, check the adjectives that he chooses. Adjectives, and to a lesser extent adverbs, express our feelings towards subjects. For instance, if we agree with a person who holds strong feelings about a subject, we may describe his opinions as impassioned. On the other hand, if we disagree with him, we may describe his opinions as excitable, which has the same meaning as impassioned, but carries a negative connotation. Pivotal words. Particularly on the longer passages, you will not be tested on most of the material in the passage. Your best reading strategies for longer passages, therefore, is to identify the places from which questions will most likely be drawn and concentrate your attention there. Pivotal words can help in this regard. Following are some of the most common pivotal words. But, although, however, yet, despite, nevertheless, nonetheless, except, in contrast, and even though. As you may have noticed, these words indicate contrast. Pivotal words warn that the author is about to either make a U-turn or introduce a counter-premise, concession to a minor point that weakens the argument. Pivotal words mark natural places for questions to be drawn. At a pivotal word, the author changes direction. The test writers form questions at these junctures to test whether you turned with the author or you continued to go straight. Rarely do the test writers let a pivotal word pass without drawing a question from its sentence. As you read a passage, note the pivotal words and refer to them when answering the questions. Pivotal words are essential to note in shorter passages as well, though we will practice recognizing them in longer passages, as that's where it will really save you essential time.